Hello, everybody. This is Joe. Welcome to Lancair 320. I've had a lot of people ask questions about the Lancair, so I thought I would do a quick video and explain a little bit about its history, what I've done to it, and where I'm going with it. Okay, to begin with, this particular Lancair is a 1987 small tail fast build kit. Bought by a gentleman in Casa Grande named Erwin Krugel. He finished it in 2005. By then, he was not very comfortable flying a hot little airplane like this, so it pretty much sat in his hangar, and he pulled it out once a month, ran it up, put it away for the next better part of decade actually, and it took me several years to convince him to sell it to me. I bought it in 2018 with about 20 hours on the airframe, and have been working on it ever since. Currently, I'm at about I think 230 hours on the airframe, and I've done quite a bit to it. Um, so Irwin built the thing as pretty much a traditional style aircraft. The engine is an O320 B2B. It was converted from an A2A, which is basically they just put in higher compression pistons, kicked it up from 150 to 160 horsepower. This one's a narrow deck, um, and it does fine with 160 horse. 180 horse probably give me better climb, but I'm not really sure if I'd get much more speed out of it or not. When I bought the thing, the first few things I did to it was, being that Irwin had built it as a traditional airplane, is I ripped out the vacuum system because I wasn't going to keep the steam gauges. I'm very much a modern technology type of guy, and so pulled out the vacuum system, pulled out all the steam gauges, replaced them with on the pilot side, for my PFD, I'm running an AvMap Ultra, which is a 9-in-1 instrument, and then my moving map is an EKP5 running in a docking station with the A2 80 AHRS system on it. So I've got the AHRS in both the Ultra and one in the EKP5 for redundancy. The Irwin had an old, I don't even remember the name of it now. It was this real old autopilot that was just junk. It really didn't work. The servo in the wing was fine, but the autopilot itself was really no good. But I found out that the servo could be plugged in directly into a Trio Easy Pilot, so I bought one of those. Made it easy. I didn't have to swap out the servo. Just plugged it into the wiring harness, and away I went. Um, the Easy Pilot is a single axis, so I added their altitude hold. So that gives me the two-axis control. They're independent of each other, the units, but that's okay. I mean, it works fine. It's a great little system. Um, let's see, what else did I put over on that side? I've also installed Advanced Flight Systems AOA. That's now part of Dynon. The reason I went with that unit over some of the others is because it has no external probes. This plane has almost nothing sticking out into the airstream. The only antenna that's external is the transponder antenna, the little TED antenna. The comm antennas are inside, the nav antenna, the ADS-B antenna, everything's up internally in the airplane. Trying to keep it as slick as possible. Moving over to the center stack, the plane originally had a TKM MX-11 radio, a single one, and an old Narco 150 transponder. Neither one of them worked great, so I went ahead and replaced the transponder with a Garmin GTX 327 and put in a pair of small 2¼ inch round radios, a Micro Air 760 and a Flightcom 760, as well as a King KMA24 for an audio panel. Makes life much easier. The headsets are wired for mono. That's fine. I can listen to mono feed if I want, or if I want to listen to stereo, I just plug directly into the headset. Not a big deal. The three engine controls are kind of strange in the layout. Instead of them being right next to each other, it's got the throttle on the upper left, the prop control upper right, and then below it is a mixture control. But what's weird is the throttle and the prop control are both vernier, but the mixture control is just a push-pull. It's on my list of things to fix. Um, at the top, I put in a Aircraft Extras AG6 annunciator button panel thing. Um, I really like it. It's really nice. It does all kinds of stuff, and I've still got space left if I want to add some more things to it. The over on the passenger side, all the engine monitoring stuff, ripped everything out, all the steam cages and the old he had single cylinder monitoring going on. So I put in a MGL Extreme EMS G2 for the engine monitor. It's being fed by the MGO RDAC up in the engine bay. So I'm reading 4 channels CHT, 4 channels EGT, as well as everything else you could want, and that's all being fed back to the EMS. It's picking up its GPS position off of the Ultra. The Ultra's got 2 serial port outs, so it's reading the Ultra, it's reading the GPS signal from the Ultra. And also on that side, I've got a EI Commander 32 because I replaced the mags with a pair of P mags, and the EI Commander gives me better control and better visibility as to what's going on there. I've also put in a VAL INS 427 because I'm getting the plane ready to go IFR compliant, and that'll allow me to do instrument approaches. On the backside that you can't see is the little control panel for the AG6, and then there's also the little control box for the angle of attack instrument, and those are all on the back side of the panel on that side. Let's see, what else have I done to this thing? Up under the pilot side is the dump valve for the hydraulic landing gear. I ended up replacing that because the one that Irwin put in was pretty much just a valve from Home Depot. It really wasn't designed for 3,000 psi. So I picked up one that was designed for super high. I think the one I got it can handle 7,000 psi. I put that in there. And that's really it for that part of the plane. Behind the pilot seat is my 406 ELT, as well as the UAvionics Echo ADS-B in and out. Unfortunately, the EKP5 can't read or can't talk to that. iPads, Androids, all that kind of good stuff, they can. But the EKP5, being that it's Italian, they want to talk Flarm. I've never heard of that language before I got the thing, but I'm a beta tester for AvMap, so I worked with them. And so what I ended up doing was putting behind the pilot seat is a Stratix ADS-B in receiver, and it's talking Flarm out of the RS-232 port, which is then going into one of the serial ends on the docking station. So the EKP5 can display traffic information for me. Kind of a way around it, but it works and didn't cost much of anything. Also behind me is behind the pilot seat is the servo for the altitude hold. Back behind the back firewall is where the hydraulic power pack is for the landing gear. I ended up having to replace that. Because this plane was such an old plane, the power pack that Irwin had got was basically the original design, and it had been redesigned, probably 4 or 5 times since then, and it was starting to fail. It would take forever to put the gear up and down, and it wouldn't hold pressure worth anything. So I ended up talking to a gentleman on the Lancair board who builds these things. He takes the power packs, which are pretty much just a boat hydraulic pump, and he modifies them to make them work better in a plane. So I bought one of those and put that back there, and it works much better. The gear will be thrown up and down now. It takes like 7 seconds. Up under the engine, let's see, I've moved the oil cooler from on the firewall where it was being fed by a 3-inch scat duct to in front of cylinder number 2. I took out the air filter from there and moved it up there because I've always had a problem with this engine running a bit hot and the oil running a bit hot, and it seems to work much better up there. Unfortunately, when I did that, I had to take out the landing light, which was in the nose of the cowling there. So I put 2 little landing lights on the landing gear on the legs, and they're just little like motorcycle LEDs, but they work great. They're very bright. I was really surprised. I replaced the original Lancair style shock absorbers, which are just the Mooney style. They're like rubber donuts, and I replaced those with a Rissy Racing TK5 damper, which is a true hydraulic shock absorber. And they work real good. They run about 300 psi of nitrogen, and they work great. Let's see. What else have I done? Being that this is a small tail, so Australia wouldn't let the small tails come in as kits. They felt that the small tail didn't have enough authority, so they made them design them to the Mark II tail, which is a little wider and a little taller. So what I did to kind of nip that in the bud is I put vortex generators underneath the horizontal stabilizer, and it made a big difference. I mean, coming into land when you're going slow, it really does give the tail a lot more authority. I got, I think, 26 under each side on the tail, and then I've got 6 on the vertical, on each side of the vertical, and it makes a big difference. Going back to the engine compartment to help fight the cooling, another thing I did is I put louvers underneath the bottom cowl on each side to help extract the hot air as it's coming down through the cylinders, and that seemed to help a little bit. And then I also put an actual cowl flap on top of the cowling in the accessory bay area, because that didn't really want it to go there, but that was the only place that I had a flat area where the thing would fit well. And not sure if it really helped with the engine cooling so much, but one of the things it did help with is keeping the RDAC cooler. The RDAC is mounted on the firewall in front of the pilot, and after I'm slowing down and coming to the land and taxiing, especially, all that heat builds up. It's at the top of the firewall, right underneath the cowling, and that heat would build up, and the thermal coupler would just be crying about how hot it was got. So with this thing open, it helps extract the some of the heat and helps keep it down a little bit. Let's see, I replaced the original Whelen xenon strobes with Whelen LEDs. That was nice. That they're just as bright, and they use less power, and they're lighter. I removed a big box from underneath my seat. Let's see, what else have I had to do to this thing? Before I could move it, right after I bought it from Irwin, before we could even fly it, we had to replace the carburetor and the mechanical fuel pump on the engine. They were both bad, but I was kind of expecting that, being that the plane had never really been flown. So after, 13 years of pretty much just sitting around, the seals had dried out, and so they leaked pretty bad. So I got those, replaced. Also put on a Casper fuel filter adapter, because this thing had just an original screen on it. The fuel filter adapter fits well, but the cowling's so tight on a Lancair that the only actual fuel filter that will fit, I can't use a standard size aircraft fuel filter. I'm using a little HP-1002. It's a little tiny thing. It's almost like a little motorcycle oil filter, but it fits real well. I mean, it fits up under there, and it cleans the oil, and it does good. Let's see, I've had to replace the Vernotherm. The one that was in there was just really old and non-responsive, so I had to put a new one of those in. Ended up having to replace cylinder number 3. That was interesting. Cylinder 3 has always run hot, and I finally decided it had run really, really hot sometimes, and so I decided, let me go ahead and replace it. And I'm glad I did, because I found that while I was replacing it, the rocker arms on cylinder number 3 were binding on the old cylinder. I'm like, oh, well, that explains quite a bit. So, got the new Millennium, or Superior Millennium cylinder on there. Runs like a champ. Gave me about an extra 50 RPM on climb out, and things do seem to run a little cooler now up there. Still running hot, hotter than I want, but I'm working on that, trying to figure out what I can do about that. As for the future, what am I going to do with this thing? Uh, well, I want to get rid of the stick on the passenger side, because it's really kind of a waste. There's no rudder pedals on that side. No rudders, no brakes, so why bother having a stick over there? All the stick does is get in the way of being able to store things up in the passenger footwell. So I plan on taking it out. Um, I also want to build a plenum box, get rid of the baffling up under the engine cowling, build a plenum box. That's supposed to help with the cooling quite a bit. And then I want to replace the Marvel carburetor with a Rotec TBI. I've got one sitting on the shelf. I just haven't gotten around to doing it yet, because I've got to fabricate some parts to get it to work in there. But that's supposed to help quite a bit as well. It's supposed to make the mixture more even, make it run better in all realms, from idle all the way up to a full power, because it helps atomize the fuel better. And so hopefully this winter I'll get it in there. We're kind of weird here in Arizona. We don't really work on the planes in the summer. It's the winter that's our flying time, because it's just too damn hot to work on in the hangars in the summer. I mean, you're inside of a giant oven. So we don't fly much in the summer, at least not in a bubble canopy like the Lancair. And if I do fly, it'll be at night, or right at the crack of dawn. And the only way I'll fly in the heat is coming back down to land in it. But I'll try to get out of here and get up into high altitudes, go up into the mountains or something early on, or like I said, even fly it at night. That's all the big things I plan on doing with it for now. A little bit on the specs. Flying along, I can typically fly along at about 160 knots indicated airspeed, which gives me about 180 knots true, on 9 gallons an hour. I carry 10.5 gallons in the header tank, and then 15 gallons in each of the wings. And I'll typically try to put down, by the time I'm down to about 6 gallons in the header tank, which is fine. I mean, that's basically 36 gallons of fuel burnt at 9 gallons an hour. So 4 hours is more than enough. I'll usually fly for 3 to 3.5 and then put it down, and that'll put me 600 to 650 nautical miles, and that's plenty, because by then I want to get out and rest anyway. The plane weighs about 1,100 pounds empty. Maximum takeoff is 1782. Maximum landing is 1682. With full fuel, that still gives me about 400 pounds useful. And so that's not bad. I mean, that's me, my wife, and about 50, 60 pounds worth of junk in the plane. So it's not a flying truck by any means, but it's not designed to be. It's designed to get you across country very, very quickly. And that's the one thing it does do very well. Landing it can be a challenge. You come in hot. But as long as you respect the airplane and you stay in front of it, you'll be fine. It's not a first plane by any means, but it's not. I don't personally think it's as difficult to fly as a lot of people say. I think you just gotta respect the machine, and you'll do fine. So that's it. That's the short version of what's going on with my plane. I can go on about what I've done to it for a long time. I mean, hell, I didn't even get into it about the accident that I had in February 2019. Ended up being a production issue, but not production from Irwin, but actually a produced part from Lancair in Oregon. Yeah, maybe I'll make another video just about that. But anyway, thanks for your time. I hope you enjoyed this, and talk to y'all later. Take care.